Hi, my name is Marianna Boros. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Neuroethology of Communication Lab at the Alta Department of Ethology, and today I would like to talk to you about how dogs discover word boundaries. Probably you have experienced that while being abroad and listening to a language that you don't know, it's not only that you don't understand what people are talking about, but it's hard to discover where a word starts and when it ends. Infants are facing this problem constantly, and it is because we are not really presenting them with words in isolation, but rather we are embedding them in full sentences or speech streams. And it turns out that in speech cues, such as pauses or intonation, are not very reliable as to word boundaries. Nonetheless, infants are learning words at quite high pace with quite high efficiency. And it turns out that at 8 months old, they are segmenting speech stream using something called statistical learning. But how? So the world surrounding us is full of patterns, and our brain is working hard to make sense of these patterns and to discover them. Speech is very special because it has very complex patterns, and we have to make complex computations to discover them. So let's take, for instance, the sequence found here. We can see that some letters are occurring more often than other letters. For example, the letter A is appearing here 4 times, while the letter B only 4, and the letter C only twice. Also, we can find that some letters are occurring together more often than other letters. So, for example, the letters B and A are occurring just as often, twice, as the letters A and C, but the letters A and A are occurring less often than these 2 previous letters. But we also have something like predictability. That is, the letter B is more reliable to predict what is appearing after it than, for example, the letter A. Because after the letter A, you can have the letter B, you can have the letter C, or you can have another letter A. However, after the letter B, you only see a letter A. So you can fairly predict that after the letter B at the end, you can expect the letter A. So when we are talking about syllables in a word, we can talk about something like frequency of co-occurrence of these syllables, so how often 2 syllables appear together, and we can also talk about the transitional probability between 2 syllables, that is, how predictable, how probable is for one syllable to follow the other. So how is it helping children in discovering word boundaries? So it turns out that the transitional probability between syllables are higher between words than at word boundaries. And this is the calculation actually that children are using to discover word boundaries. They're pretty good at mathematics. It turns out that there are other species who are also able to segment speech. However, what kind of computations they are doing to achieve this ability is not known. We know that at least rats are not able to use the complex transitional probability computations to segment speech streams. But dogs are living in a human environment and they are surrounded by speech all the time. We are talking to them via the speech signal. They hear us talking all the time. So we can say that speech is pretty important for them. Previous research has found several similarities between the neural processing of speech in humans and dogs. And we discovered this using a unique methodology that was developed in our lab. So we are one of the few labs in the world that is able to apply non-invasive canine neuroscience. We use electroencephalography to measure dogs' brain activity. This is a non-invasive technique that requires no training from dogs. So family dogs can come to our department, and once they feel relaxed and they lay down on a mattress, we apply the electrodes using a special paste that can be washed off later. And we present them stimuli from loudspeakers and we record their brain activity. functional magnetic resonance, that is fMRI, is a bit more complex. It requires from the subject to stay motionless in the scanner while it is recording the brain activity using very, very loud noise. So we present stimuli using MRI-compatible headphones. Although dogs are not physically restricted, they can come out anytime from the scanner. They usually don't do that. They are very happy participating in our research. So using these two techniques, we asked ourselves whether dogs are able to segment a continuous speech stream. If so, what kind of computations they are using, and what brain regions are supporting this capacity. So first we conducted an Eeg study in which we tested altogether 51 dogs, from which, due to technical reasons, we analyzed the data from 19 dogs. And this experiment, we presented dogs with an artificial speech stream that was built up from 4 artificial words. And the speech stream was constructed in a way that there were no other cues helping dogs in deciding what are the word boundaries and to discover the words than the internal statistics of the words of the speech stream. That is, there were no intonational cues, there were no pauses. So the speech stream sounded something like that. We created this speech stream to be able to decide whether dogs are using the information of word frequency or they are computing transitional probability to segment the speech stream. So, half of the words in this speech stream occurred twice as often than other words. And this was because we wanted to compare the high frequency words with the low frequency words so that we can decide whether dogs are making sense of frequency information. Additionally, the high frequency words, when they appear together, the syllables that were in the middle created so-called part words that appeared just as often than low frequency words in the speech stream, but their internal statistics, the transitional probability between their syllables were lower than in case of the low frequency words. So when we compared these two kinds of words, we got information about whether dogs are able to compute transitional probability information. We presented these words in isolation after 8.5 minutes of familiarization of speech stream. So this sounded like that. Each word was presented 40 times, and then we checked whether there are differences in the brainwave elicited by these word presentations. So what we got? We found that dogs were able to make use of both kinds of information, that is, the information of frequency of co-occurrence and the information of transitional probability. So when we compared high frequency words, marked here with blue, with low frequency words, we found that at one point, approximately 560 milliseconds after word presentation, their brain response differed. Additionally, what we found that when we compared words that differed in their transitional probability, so part words shown here with violet and low frequency words shown here with green, their brain responses also differed in a little bit earlier time window, approximately 200 milliseconds after word presentation. So it turns out that dogs are able to use these complex computations about transitional probabilities to segment a speech stream. So they are just as good mathematicians as infants are. Next, we asked ourselves what brain regions are supporting this capacity. To do this, we conducted an fMRI experiment in which we showed, additionally to a speech stream containing words, another speech stream which had no internal pattern the syllables that build up this speech stream followed each other randomly. In this experiment, we tested 21 dogs and we analyzed the data from 18 dogs. So first, we measured the dogs with a so-called baseline measurement in which we expected no difference between the processing of the two types of speech stream because the dogs just heard the speech stream for the first time. They didn't have time to learn about the internal statistics. Then outside the scanner, in another room, they listened to these two speech streams for 60 minutes from a loudspeaker, and then again we tested them in a 4.5 minute fMRI test, where we expected to see differences due to learning. What did we find? We found two brain regions that differentiated between random speech streams and speech streams containing words. The first brain area was a subcortical brain area, the so-called basal ganglia, that was more active when dogs heard a random speech stream than when they heard a speech stream consisting of words. We know about basal ganglia that it is important for sequence learning, and for example in rats it participates in motor sequence learning. So it is a general sequence processing area. But we also know that in humans, when we are running experiments similar to ours, there is a cortical brain region in the auditory cortex, brain regions that are specifically processing speech, that show difference between random speech streams and words. So we also tested what is happening in the dog's auditory cortex, and we found that indeed, when dogs were listening to a random speech stream, the activity didn't change over time. However, when we showed dogs a speech stream that contained words, the activity of the auditory cortex increased over time. So it seems there were some learning involved. So what we can learn from these two studies? We can say that there are striking similarities between humans and dogs in the complex computations they use to discover word boundaries, and that the brain regions supporting this capacity are similar. The results of this study were published in Current Biology, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank my colleagues who are in this picture for their work. And I would like to say thank you for your attention.